Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. And I'm really, really sorry I do not speak a word of German. So I hope you can follow me. I'll speak English with an Italian accent, if that helps. I know some of you will speak Italian, so you probably recognize that. But I'm sorry. This is my. I'm really pleased to be back in Vienna after 35 years. The last time I was here was 35 years ago. And why was I here? I was traveling around Europe with some friends, hitchhiking around Europe like we used to do in those days. And we ended up, it was four of us, four Italian guys, traveling in twos and twos. And we ended up giving each other appointments, the next day in the next city. So we ended up in, study from France, Switzerland, Austria, the Czech Republic, etc. So in Vienna, we ended up, I ended up at I think it was the train station was called Westbahnhof, and so we waiting there, and we couldn't see our friends arriving there, and so we set up camp outside Westbahnhof in 1979. This was, and then the other friends joined us, but not our Italian friends. We met Algerians and French people and Spanish, and so we set up this little camp which is called Hotel California. We named it, and we spent 2 nights sleeping on sleeping bags outside the station, waiting for our friends, who ended up doing the same in North Bahnhof, So okay, and so we ended up really meeting, but that was a time of adventure. So times have changed, but I'm still an adventurous guy, and this I'm going to tell you about the adventure of Idea Store today. First of all, I think the first question some of you will want to know is, what is an Idea Store? It's a number of things. It's a project which is started in 1998 in London, in a part of London, and it comprises library, learning, and information, as you can see from this picture of one of our Idea Stores. It is a public service; it's a free service to the public. So we basically incorporated the library service with the learning for adults and families services. And there we have 5 of these Idea Stores we created. This is a smaller one, Idea Store Crisp Street. This is the photo of the latest Idea Store we opened only a year ago. And it's called Idea Store Water Market. And this one incorporates other services, such as the municipality's services. And in fact, it's not unlike what Rolf was talking about Oros, where in some cases they joined the civic services with the library services. So we're doing something quite similar to that. Okay, what do we do? As I said, the library service in a kind of traditional sort of way, where you can borrow books for free. We also do a number of courses, a lot of courses, about 900 courses every year, where you can learn, in this case, dance. For the courses, we have professional qualified teachers teaching these courses within the Idea Store buildings. For the courses, you have to pay a fee for those, but it's highly subsidized by the central government. So what people really pay is really tiny part of what the real cost is. So we offer dance classes, we offer cookery classes of all types. We offer IT courses. Of course, we offer courses in English for speakers of other languages. We have a lot of immigrants in our part of London where we are, and it makes sense to really just offer those people the means to learn the language. Of course, we offer services from year 0 all the way to adulthood. This is one of our libraries on a normal kind of Saturday afternoon, pretty busy, particularly in the children area. We also have lots of activities. Some of the activities we do ourselves with our own staff organized. Sometimes we invite guests, like this is an artist, this is a graphic novelist who came and did a workshop for teenagers. We also do lots of other projects with young people, and lots of crafts activities which are really relevant to the culture, which is a very diverse culture in our part of London. We like to, try to mix generations sometimes and do intergenerational activities. In this case, there were a group of young people who wanted to do some research about the war, what was it like during the war, and of course, they had the luxury of actually meeting people who were children themselves during the Second World War. We have performers, artists come in and perform for us. We do activities for older people, but also older people, as again, we have a mixed, quite a diverse culture, and we also have things sometimes mixed, sometimes specifically for people from different ethnic groups. For example, older people, we realized that older people of Bangladeshi origin, we have lots of people from Bangladeshi origin, like to talk about politics. So we decided to offer a weekly session when we talk. A member of staff who speaks the language, they look at the Bangladeshi printed newspapers or online, and they discuss the politics back in the country. We have a reading festival. We have authors throughout the year come in and talk about their books, but also a reading festival in November, which is getting bigger and bigger. And we also have art galleries, particularly we have one particular pretty good art gallery within an idea store. And the idea is very much to open and offer something more than just sometimes the books. Okay, so just to summarize, so far we've opened 5 idea stores, and this is where they are. This is what they look like. And we started in, the first one was opened in 2002. I was the manager of the first idea store. And then we opened another 4. The plan is to open 7. So these 7 idea stores will cover the whole of the area in London where we are. We still have some other buildings. We still have 2 traditional libraries that we're hoping to be able to replace with an idea store, which will be bigger, open longer hours, being able to do more things in them. We also have a local history and archive, and also we have a learning center for adults where we do specific things which cannot be done in an idea store. For example, pottery or cookery or photography or ceramics and things which are really sometimes a bit problematic because of the structure they need. Okay, the impact since we started opening the first idea store in 2002, 12 years ago, has been really, we're very pleased with it. Because as you can see, we quadrupled the number of visits to our library or idea stores in the last 12 years. The book loans are really going up a lot. And this is in a context in the United Kingdom where really book loans are going down every year, less and less and less. And in our case, more and more. We also have a great customer satisfaction levels. Again, we are one of the top now in London and the country. And also, at the same time, we managed to achieve, some efficiency. We have invested some money initially to generate the idea stores. At the same time, we managed to keep the costs down, and really in terms of efficiency and justifying even to politicians how we spent our money, the cost per visit now is much, much lower than it was in 2002 when we started. So that really is really important. What money we use it very, very well. It's no wasted. We don't keep libraries open and empty. So all our places are open 7 days a week and very, very busy. This is what people say about us, some of the comments that people say when we do the customer satisfaction surveys. They say a really complimentary thing, particularly about our staff, who are very, very good and very, very committed. This is a particularly good comment we also appreciate, and it is from the Minister for Libraries, Ed Vasey. And as you can see, is complimentary as well. The interesting thing about Ed Vasey, that is actually part of the current centre-right coalition government. And to be fair to him, he says this now when he's in power, but he's been saying all this all along, even when we was in opposition 10 years ago. He already recognized even then, he said, look, Sergio, I think idea stores are fantastic, and you're doing a great job. We may disagree with your administration, with the current government, but actually I think you're doing a great job. So it's really good he keeps to his word and he still says that now he's in power. So we're very pleased with that kind of appreciation. How did it all start? How did we get to where we are today? And the big question is also why? This is why. This figure will tell you, gives you an idea where we were 16 years ago, 1998. This is the percentage of people not using libraries in our part of London. Okay, so if you consider that in the UK, normally half the population uses libraries and half don't use libraries, this was a staggering and very depressing figure for us to see. You can see that really the great majority of people did not want to be engaged with libraries. Okay, they didn't want to know. So really, this was really a big wake-up call for us in our little neighborhood to say, actually, we got to do something about it. Otherwise, we're going to close the libraries. What can we do? I mean, libraries are going to die or extincted, like we were talking about in the previous speaker. Very briefly, the place is quite particular. The place in London where we are is called Tower Hamlets. It is one of the 32 municipalities in the capital, and it is, it's got a lot of history. The Tower of London is in our part of London, so it's very near the city where the Tower of London is, and it goes eastwards from there. It's got a lot of poverty. It is one of the poorest areas in the UK. Okay, we have about 265,000 people live in this area, and a huge number are very poor, and many unemployed, above the national average, and so on. At the same time, we have a lot of wealth. We have the financial district called Canary Wharf is also based in our area, and here people earn 3 times as much than the national salary. Okay, so really that creates a lot of contrast between people who work in this place, and normally they don't live in Tower Hamlets, these people, and people who live in Tower Hamlets, and mostly a lot of them unemployed. So it is an extremely, as I said, extremely diverse area. More than 50% of the people are not white. Particularly, they are either from Bangladesh. The majority are from Bangladesh originally, but now they're in the 2nd or 3rd generation. And some from Chinese communities and Vietnamese communities and Somali communities. Right. And this is what we started doing. We asked these very people, we asked the people who actually live here in our area to say, okay, tell us why don't you come to libraries? Why don't you use our libraries? Everyone else does use the library, not in this area. Tell us why. So what we did, we were very ambitious program of investing upfront, having a long-term strategy to invest and to conduct a very kind of in-depth marketing research exercise. And we realized we could not do it in-house. We did not have the expertise within the municipality to do this. So what we did, we hired a company that specialized in that. So we gave them the brief, and the brief was simply find out from people why don't they use libraries, and second, what would make them use libraries more. That's what we did. So what they did, a number of things, road shows, consultation with the public, again, not unlike what Rolf is doing in Denmark, engaging with the public. But the main thing really was creating a focus group of 600 people who represented Tower Hamlets from the point of view of age, gender, ethnicity, disability, social class, etc. So these 600 people, really, we engaged even further. We even organized, the company organized an interview in their homes, asking them specific questions, in-depth questions, for up to an hour, maybe even an hour and a quarter, having a cup of tea and having a proper discussion, which is really very different from doing a marketing research when you simply ask people in the street. And with a piece of paper with 10 questions, and it's raining and windy, and people just tell you anything to, say goodbye. So really, we had to really engage with these people. And we even, this is 1998, 99, it was a time when there was a bit more money than now. We even paid them for that. And we gave them something like the equivalent of 25 euros in kind of department store vouchers to appreciate that actually they spend time with us. So really they were engaged and willing to give. They didn't feel like they were doing it as a favor. They did it as because they wanted to. What we found out, some of the things there are not particularly surprising, but the first one is actually because everybody says they want to use, they think libraries are important, and yet they're not using them. But other things like having more books, of course, our libraries at the time had very few books. More IT. Again, our libraries at the time had very little access to free internet, for example. They wanted more convenient operating hours. Our libraries at the time, in 1998-99, I'm talking about still, only had 46 hours a week opening hours. And some of those hours were really kind of complicated, difficult to understand, and didn't make much sense from the point of view of the population. But the most important thing really was the last one, where people told us we would come to libraries if you put the libraries where we already go and do other things. And the way the habit of the city is organized, there are about 7 different neighborhoods. Each is more or less independent and self-contained. It's got its own center, shops, street markets, post office, bank, etc., schools. So most people gravitate around those. And they say, look, if you put the libraries where we go, we're likely to come to you as well. Now, the problem is, at the time, we used to have 13 libraries, 13, and which actually was the highest number of libraries per head in London. So the problem was not a lack of library, but the libraries were mostly located in the wrong place. Even just half a kilometer or a kilometer away, it can be a big distance. If it's, again, in London, it does rain a lot, as you know. So when it becomes like quite an effort to go to a library, if it's not really conveniently located. So we had to listen to all those things, and we had to listen to all the things they were telling us, and start to put together some idea of what they wanted. And so at this point, we started to think, actually, more than just building some new buildings, we need to think about a new concept, and possibly a new brand. So at this point, we actually joined forces with a group of architects in London who specialized in architecture design, but also communication and branding. And with them, we managed to really analyze the quality data that we received from the people to say, what does it mean? What is the message? What do people really, really want? So what we did, we then created this brand, which we called Idea Store, and which, as you can see at the center, has got the concept of lifelong learning. Now, in the UK, there is a tradition of people returning to learning in later in the life. After having left college, they normally return to learning, sometimes for pleasure, to learn a new skill, or just a photography skill, or something else, or to paint, and sometimes actually to improve themselves and their position in society by learning, a proper skill, a hard skill, become, I don't know, accountants or teachers or some other profession. So we put lifelong learning here because a lot of people told us, don't forget, this is an area which is very, very poor. They told us we need to go back to learning. We left school with not enough qualifications. So we now need to go back to learning. Otherwise, we're going to end up being unemployed. Or, if we are employed, we're going to be employed in very low level and poorly paid jobs. So from that point of view, they said, can you help us with that? That was really interesting. So we put learning at the heart of what we do. We then considered the built environment. So that means new buildings had to be really efficient, transparent, accessible, very welcoming, but also in the right location. The products and services, again, is trying to position ourselves in a way that a private company, will position itself in thinking of products and services in a very customer-focused way. So not only the books and the access to the internet, but of course the courses, cafes, performance spaces, lots of events, gallery spaces and art, and all those kind of things. So we had to put much more into the equation than originally planned. We then invested a lot in communications by, trying to find a way of actually communicating to people the important message. Because there's no point coming up with a good brand if you don't have a really good communication strategy as well to go with that. And behavior. People told us, look, we want to come to a place where you feel much more relaxed and respected than you actually do in the current colleges or libraries. Okay. So we then moved on to the brand values, which are, again, based around lifelong learning, of engage, empower, and enrich. And then we created this kind of promotional materials, such as this, to convey the idea that idea store is part of everyday life. We created some brand guidelines. We produced magazines that actually told people what idea store would be. We started publishing the magazine 2 years before we even opened the first idea store. We then put together the mix in the right proportion, learning as well as a library. So I'm not a librarian myself, so I come from the education sector. I used to be a teacher and then head of department in adult education. And the librarians came to me and said, Sergio, can we work together and create something different? So we started thinking, actually, there is a lot of commonalities between learning and reading. The two things are really two sides of the same coin. We then learned a lot from the retail model. And again, sometimes when I talk to librarians, colleagues, about this, they say, but we shouldn't do anything to do with retail. That's a commercial enterprise, and we are a public service. And we say, okay, the principles, of course, are different, but some of the communication and the means to achieve that can be similar. So we tried to design the idea store to look very much like department stores or bookshops, conveying this really through really strong imagery and very direct messages, having lots of books face on with the cover that really sells the book. The opening hours had to be very much in line with what happens in the commercial sector, 7 days a week, open late until 9 o'clock most days, so it really becomes easier for people to participate. We then looked at the rules, and sometimes we thought, actually, why, again, let's make the place much more relaxed and uncomfortable. So we say, if we have a cafe here, we should not have a sign that tells you no food and no drink outside the cafe. You can take a drink or a sandwich wherever you are in the idea store and carry on working and studying, do whatever you do. Just because, you know, if you think about it, when people borrow a book, they take it home for 3 weeks, and we don't tell them, don't read your book in the kitchen, or don't have a coffee while you read the book. We just trust them. We hope they can bring the book back in a good state. So why don't we not trust people in a library? They don't change personality just because they enter a library, but they're just the same people. So let's relax. Mobile phones are allowed as well, as long as people are considerate and they don't, abuse that right. So they don't. This guy is talking to his friend, probably, I don't know, booking a holiday abroad or maybe checking the football results. He's not disturbing anyone else. So why should we say don't use a mobile phone? He's been a very responsible guy. We trust him. We respect that, and he respects us. Very briefly about recruiting. We learned a lot to recruit and manage staff in the way that in the commercial and the private sector they do it, which is a bit different from what happens in the business sector, in the private sector, in the public sector. So we hire normally staff from the local community because it is important to remove the barrier and have local people who serve local people. Staff development and training is also based on a number of things that actually we learned from the business sector as well as the public sector. We run the service in a dynamic way. Staff on the front line work, this is a typical rota for a normal day. They work 1 hour in each area, and then they move on. They go from the help desk to the children's library, to the adult fiction area, to the non-fiction area, to the internet area, to the back office, back to the help desk. So throughout the day, the idea is to have people with generic, good all-round skills and not specialists so much. This is the only way we can guarantee 71-hour opening a week. We cannot afford it otherwise, unless people will prepared and willing and able to do everything. The latest thing, just briefly before I close, is the developments we recently did on health strategy, employability, and children's. Measures of quality of life are to do with how healthy a community is. In Hamlets, we have some of the worst records of poor health in the UK. So we joined forces with health practitioners, doctors, nurses, surgeries, to actually help people become more informed and educated about a good diet and exercise and mental health and so on. So we think we have a big role to play in this sense. So we devised a health strategy, and if you get a chance to go onto our website, I'll give you the email later, this later, you can have a look what that means. Employability is also very important. We have much higher than average in unemployment rates in Hamlets. Therefore, it's important we work with local partners to find ways of actually helping people get into jobs through training, through advice on how to prepare for an interview, for example, or to write a better curriculum vitae. And lastly, in the last year, we reflected on our impact we had on educating children and getting to really understand and appreciate the pleasure of reading. So we devised a children's strategy which really is aimed at that. So this is, again, details are on our website. If you want to look, you can have a look at that. And I gather, some of us will be able to continue conversation later on in the workshop. And I just close with this picture. It goes back to the beginning. This is how we started Idea Store, because we used to have a library just like this. This used to be one of our libraries, and I'm not talking about 100 years ago. I'm talking about less than 20 years ago. Less than 20 years ago, we used to run a library out of this in central London. So this was really quite shameful, really. And so because of that, we were we had no choice but to go forward. Anyway, thank you for your time.